What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. November is Eczema Awareness Month in Canada, and I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to just do a little sit down video and chat with you guys. This time last year I had a crazy autoimmune flare-up. Honestly felt like my body was shutting down, and I'll get more into that in this video, but it ended up being severe atopic dermatitis. I felt like I really needed to sit down and kind of chat through the whole story, how it happened, why it happened, as well as how I've been healing along the way. So if you or someone you know struggles with eczema, or you have an autoimmune disorder yourself, this might be helpful, and I hope you enjoy the video. So obviously the last couple years have been very hectic and heavy and chaotic in their own ways, but 2021 for me was especially hard. There were a lot more hurdles and challenges that I was faced with last year, both on the professional and personal front. It was a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate. So last year especially, my pace of work changed quite a bit. I moved from corporate marketing into a creative advertising agency, and then ended up taking on a lot more freelance work for other social media clients, and was also in the process of building up my own social channels. I also work in the events industry, so between lockdowns when things were safe, I was still servicing makeup clients and taking on event planning clients as well, and it was a lot. It was a lot to juggle. In the process of all of this, I had a lot of personal milestones as well as personal hardships that I was faced with. I was moving out of my family home for the first time, and that too with my boyfriend, and this was all happening while my grandparents got really sick and my mom was in the States with them, and I wasn't able to share a lot of these otherwise happy moments with my family, which made them very bittersweet. I ended up actually losing my grandmother last year, and she was extremely important to me. My grandfather, who is now 92, has dementia, so that definitely escalated a lot after we lost my grandmother. That is just the tip of the iceberg. We had a ton of family injuries, we got our new puppy Archie, and there was just a lot of stress all around. At the start of 2021, I thought 2020 was a slower year. I can definitely take on whatever this next year has to offer, and I definitely had to rethink that as things started to get out of hand. So I took a lot of things off my plate and tried my best to manage my stress and time in every and any way possible. There was only so much I could take off my plate personally. I focused more on the professional front and really offloaded as much as I could and paused as much as I could to really just hone in on my full-time role, which unfortunately ended up being extremely high stress, and I just felt like it wasn't aligned with what I needed for my health and well-being. So everyone's body obviously handles emotions differently. Some have higher thresholds for certain emotions, others have lower thresholds, and the good and bad stress in my life combined with the grief of losing my grandmother was definitely a lot for my body to process. Didn't make it known until about October of last year. I was away at a cottage for a friend's birthday, and on my way back I started to see a lot of hives on my face. At first I thought it could have been a reaction from something I maybe was exposed to at the cottage, but throughout the day it started to get worse and worse, and then the next morning I woke up with a face that was completely swollen, sore, and inflamed. I didn't know how or why this was happening. Again, I thought the day before was just a case of hives, so this seemed like maybe an allergic reaction, and I went about my day, tried to continue through my work, and it started to become very, very unbearable throughout the day. My eyes started to get so heavy and hot, and it was almost impossible to keep them open. And then I started to notice a lot more dryness on my face, my eyes, my neck. I think the stress got to a point that it was too high for my body to handle, that it was really just purging everything and pushing everything to the surface. So in a matter of a few days, my condition got extremely, extremely serious. I was extremely lethargic. I ended up having no appetite. I was getting hot and cold flashes constantly, couldn't sleep properly at night, but then in the morning, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. I started to develop more raised, inflamed patches along my face and body, and noticed that there was a lot more dryness and texture to them. I visited my family doctor, and I was prescribed some topical steroids as well as an oral course of prednisone because the symptoms were exponentially worsening, and the doctor wasn't exactly sure what happened, but based on the experience of me visiting a cottage and coming back with these symptoms, he too thought it could have been some sort of allergic reaction or maybe even contact dermatitis. So I was prescribed this first course of medications just to see how things would go. I want to make note at this point that I had never experienced something like this before. I did experience eczema as a baby, and then very, very minutely as a preteen, and it had never made its way to the places that it was showing up this time around. So it definitely didn't occur to me that it could have been eczema because it seemed so completely unlike anything I had ever experienced before. But the story continues. While on my first round of medication, the patches still continued to spread on my body. They made their way down my neck, onto my chest, more onto my shoulders and arms, and also onto my torso. So clearly this was an issue that was not necessarily localized, and something stronger and deeper was going on. I also started to notice that my overall mood was going down. I was continuously and constantly drained of energy, and it really started to become a problem that was affecting my day-to-day life. Not even on the topic of how I looked, but more so how I felt and how I was able to perform. While on these medications, in the course of a week, I started to look and feel like someone completely different. I started to undergo quite a bit of testing on the allergy side of things, food sensitivities, fungal infections, bacterial infections, literally anything and everything that this possibly could have been. I mentioned my history of eczema to the specialists that I was seeing, but this case was so unlike anything any of the specialists I visited had seen before or treated before. I was visiting dermatologists on a weekly basis and honestly having to take more and more medications every time I visited. I was on oral and topical steroids to a point that I was floating. I was on another planet. If you've ever been on prednisone or know anyone that's taken it, you know the feeling. It's an extremely strong steroid, and they say that after you start to take 10 milligrams of this for maybe a week or so, you start to feel rather loopy. I was on 50 milligrams of prednisone for 3 weeks, obviously tapering on and off, while also taking a bunch of other prescription medications to control any sort of allergy symptoms, inflammation, sleeping pills. I felt completely defeated. I felt like I was not in control of my body at all. I felt like I was completely useless as well and only able to function for a minute period of time before all of the medication kicked in and made me absolutely loopy. And during all of this, I was still having to function and perform, and obviously that is not the easiest thing to do given the circumstances. I thankfully had such incredible support from my boyfriend and my family, and I truly feel like I was able to share this experience on Instagram and TikTok and kind of build this community of people that at least felt seen and heard, and in turn gave me the support that I needed as well. But ultimately, it was really hard to have to go about my day-to-day when I truly no longer felt like myself. Mind you, this was also happening during my absolute favorite time of year. I mean, who doesn't love fall and winter? And all of the festivities were kicking up, and I just truly had no desire or no interest to do anything. So the testing continued and the cycling of medications continued as well, and I also started to manipulate the products that I was using and the diet that I was on. I started to play around with the AIP diet, which is known as the autoimmune protocol diet, which really assists in reducing the inflammation that results from autoimmune diseases or disorders. It's basically the paleo diet, but harder. I cut out coffee, alcohol, gluten, dairy, sugar, nuts, seeds, and a ton of other things. I definitely recommend looking into the AIP diet if you are considering a diet change for any sort of autoimmune disorder. It is an elimination diet, but it's not something that you're meant to do permanently. It's just supposed to help you figure out what your triggers are on the dietary side of things. When I tell you I was trying everything, I was trying everything. On the holistic front, on the pharmaceutical front, on the nutritionist front, I was doing it all. I was trying to do it all. And I definitely think at a point that was making my condition worse, more on the mental side of things, because I felt like I was trying everything possible and my condition was not getting better. I started to taper down the things that I was doing and kind of focused in on simplifying my day-to-day, whether it was just using a limited number of skincare products, kind of braving it through the pain, or really challenging myself to stick to this AIP diet. This was probably the most discipline that I ever had to exercise in my life, and ultimately it worked out for the better, because after a ton of testing and my body finally responding, doctors were able to identify that it was all a result of stress. So around 3 weeks after the initial flare-up, I started to see quite a bit of improvement. And mind you, this was only 3 weeks, so 3 weeks on a roller coaster the entire time, which was exhausting, but I finally started to feel better, and I had also come to the conclusion that I needed to leave my full-time job. Not for another job, not to travel the world, not to have an eat, pray, love experience, but to truly prioritize what mattered, which was my health. This was definitely a period of time that was very hard on me and truly hurt the hustler in me. I got my first job when I was 16, and from the age of 16, literally up until last year, I always was working at least 3 jobs. always trying to have diversity in my schedule and made it a point to always do my best in every role that I was in. And just knowing that I had to step away from something that I truly put my heart and soul into because of health was a hard pill to swallow, but ultimately health is wealth and you need to listen to the signs before it's too late. And it was starting to feel like it was getting to that point, so I needed to listen to my body before some irreversible damage was done. So I quit my job. My last day ended up being my birthday and I still worked until midnight. I can honestly tell you that the sadness and just broken spirit that I had at that point was enough fuel to make me feel like I was making the right decision, because that was a feeling that I did not want to feel any longer and definitely would not wish upon anyone else. So a few weeks after I quit my job, I'm starting to let the stress subside and just accept the fact that I now have the time and effort and energy to dedicate to getting back to a point of being healthy. But lo and behold, the story doesn't stop there. I started to notice these very small dots showing up on my neck and my upper back, which eventually spread down my whole chest, my torso, and even on my shoulders and arms. And based on the results of me having atopic dermatitis, this definitely didn't look like that. The patches on my body before looked a lot more abstract, but this time around they started to spread into these coin-like, disc-like patches, and after some research, I found that it was nummular eczema. How and why this ended up happening after I thought I was healed, no clue, but ultimately healing is not a linear process and it doesn't happen overnight. It definitely took quite a lot of effort, especially this time around with me not going back to those heavy prescription medications and taking the holistic approach to healing. Taking healing into my own hands meant incorporating things that I felt would truly benefit me and my body and my mental well-being as well, based on the things that otherwise made me feel amazing. And truth be told, all of 2021 with the lockdowns, the constant closures, I did not work out at all. I had no motivation to work out at home because my home became my office, which also became my leisure space. And ultimately, I didn't want to go out and work out because nothing quite felt as comfortable as home. I mean, we were also advised not to leave the house, so this was definitely something that needed to be addressed. And I started exercising again. I started focusing more on mindfulness, meditation. I started to focus more on my creative outlets and really just connect with my inner child again, which I think was something that was missing all of last year and honestly for a few years in my adulthood. So I want to say I had about 6 months of a chronic autoimmune flare-up. The course of those 6 months, I was not able to wear a lot of the clothing that I would have felt otherwise confident in. I wore little to no makeup. Editor Ruchi again. I'd like to add that this part actually made me really confident in my skin and just made me embrace the imperfections, and since then I don't like to wear makeup 99.9% of the time. I mean, it's just so freeing. And being someone who loves dressing up, is a makeup artist, that was a really big part of what I looked forward to. But looking back, if I could change that experience, as hard as it was, I don't think I would change anything about it, because it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about the strength that we have as human beings, and it made me appreciate life and health a lot more. And now we're in November of 2022. It is my eczema-versary, I suppose, and I'm feeling a million times better physically and mentally, and just knowing that I was able to get through that experience and come out stronger on the other end with patience and grace and kindness for my body and my healing is truly rewarding. If you or anyone you know is struggling with an autoimmune disease or disorder, please remember this. You need to prioritize your health and healing, because no one else can do it for you, and you know what's best. You know your body best. You know what you need to heal. So please, please prioritize that. Jobs will come and go, friends will come and go, events will come and go. Your health is something that cannot be replaced. I know everyone's experience over the last few years has not been uniform, and everyone's healing experience is not the same either. No two people are the same. No two of us have the same experiences, and we don't live the same lives. We don't have the same bodies. We don't have the same needs. So I think it's really important to consider your circumstances and the things that you and your body and your mind truly need to be in your happiest and healthiest state, because that is what you need to focus on, and that is what you need to pursue. I have so many other elements of my experience that I can share with you, from the products that I use that I found to be beneficial, ones that didn't work for me, as well as the more natural approaches that I took to healing. But all that aside, I wanted to first and foremost share my story with you in the case that you are experiencing something similar and maybe haven't heard someone speak out about it. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. My handle is right here. I also really want to hone in on YouTube and just kind of share more of my wellness experience with you and share my passion for mindfulness. Mental health and well-being is a core passion of mine, so I definitely want to start sharing that more here. And as always, feel free to drop any questions as well specific to this video or just general ones, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. I know this time of year can be pretty tough with the seasonal blues as well as the holidays coming up, especially if you're grieving a loss or just going through a hard time. But if that is the case, please remember that you truly are not alone. There's so much support around you. If you feel like you can't find that anywhere else, please feel free to come right back here, because you have a friend in me that truly wants to see you thrive and feel and do your best. So until I see you guys next time, take it easy, stay safe, stay happy, and take care of yourselves. Bye.